You're listening to Stand Out Get Noticed, episode 240. Hi there, Rockstar, and welcome back to Stand Out Get Noticed. I'm Christina Canters, your host, and I'm all about helping high-performing professionals and business leaders to build powerful communication skills. You can learn more at thecmethod.com. Now, I want to thank everyone who wrote to me to tell me how much they enjoyed last week's episode 239, which was called Are You Living in Your Zone of Genius? It seems like it resonated with many of you. So if you haven't listened to that episode, make sure you go back and take a listen. Now, next week will be the last regular podcast of 2020. After this, I'll be doing a best of holiday series where I'll be resharing the most popular podcasts of the year. If you're taking time off, this will be a really good opportunity for you to catch up on episodes that you've missed and perhaps re-listen to some that you found especially useful. Now, for the final episode, or the final regular episode, I will be doing a Things I've Learned in 2019. So that's going to be next week. Always fun to do a reflection. All right, let's get into this week's episode where we're talking about how to be resilient in highly competitive environments. Now, I want you to think about, have you ever had the feeling that everyone else is doing better than you? That your work or what you've achieved is less than? Do you notice yourself comparing yourself to other people? Now, this is something that I experienced constantly when I was in architecture school, which was a very competitive environment. And, I notice myself doing it now as a business owner, seeing other people and what they're doing with their businesses. And it can be quite damaging when taken to heart. So that's what we're talking about this week. And I'm really excited to introduce you to my guest. Her name is Ines Hemmings. Now, Ines and I have something in common. We both studied architecture and we both have since moved in to different fields. Maybe we'll get into films at some point. So Ines she's a recent graduate of architecture of Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. And she now lives in Melbourne, where she's carved out a path for herself as a teacher, an activist, a speaker, an author, and a TV host. Her mission is to empower architects and creatives to find their voice and share their truth. And she's working towards an empowered future for the architecture profession and also for conscious built environments. She's the founder of What Architecture School Does Not Teach You. That's what it's called. It's called What Architecture School Does Not Teach You, which I love. And I'll link up to that in the description of this episode. You can go there. You can see all the videos that she's created. They're very, very inspiring. And you can really get a sense of the passion that she has and the change that she wants to make in the world. Now, we had this conversation and Ines shared her experience of comparing herself to others during her studies and the negative impacts this had on her health and well-being. She also talks about what she did to pull herself out of it. She shares some tools and techniques that you can also implement if you find yourself comparing yourself to others, feeling stressed, feeling imbalanced. Now, you don't have to be in the architecture and design industry to relate to this. This episode is for you if you want to find more peace, more balance, calm, and resilience in a highly competitive environment, whether that is if you're studying, running your own business, or working in corporate. So, you ready to meet Ines Hemmings? Let's do it.
For a long time, I did architecture. I went to school and I thought I needed to become a traditional architect in the sense that I need to design and construct buildings. And I knew from very early on that's not what I wanted to do traditionally. I wanted to connect architecture to different disciplines, So, in terms of knowledge base, architecture is connected to so many other fields. If you think of, event management, that can be connected, or graphic design, or exhibition curation. It can be connected to neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, even human potential. What I do now can be connected to activism. So many things. What we learn at architecture school is like the smallest box of what we perceive architecture to be. But you can break out of that box.
For sure. And look, as much as I talk about the thing, architecture school doesn't teach you X, Y, Z. There is still a lot that it really does teach you. And I mean,
Yes.
I learned to how to have a great eye for detail, and a great design eye. And I've brought that into various aspects of my business. If I'm designing a PowerPoint slide, like I can do that really well. And I attribute that to architecture school.
For sure. Did you cultivate your communication skills and your presentation skills during school already, or just afterwards, after architecture school, you said, oh, architecture, I'm going into something else now?
No, I started to develop my communication skills while I was studying because we had to go up and present our work, every week or every fortnight. Yes. And it was there where I experienced the sheer terror of standing up in front of an audience and having your work. And this wasn't just any old public speaking experience. Like, this was you standing up, presenting your heart. Like, this is your baby that you've toiled on for all semester. And then with one comment or one look, a tutor can completely put your work to shame and derail your confidence and be like, nah, don't get it. That doesn't look good. You clearly haven't put any effort in there. You haven't thought about this. And you're being torn down in front of your classmates. And it's heart-wrenching. So that was the moment when I realized I don't want to do this. I don't want to feel this anxious anymore. Yeah. So that's when I started to make those changes.
That's really good. Once you face an obstacle, just, grow, better yourself and get over it. That's what I believe we should do in all different kinds of fields, not just in terms of communication. But to go back what you just said, there's a problematic in that, I think. And, most of us architecture students feel like that, and also people in other industries, because we think that when we put a project out there or when we design a building, it's our baby, So it's our thing that we carry and we mother it. We're like a mother to this creative idea that we've given birth to. And so, when you have a baby and someone attacks your baby, you will do anything to protect it and you will fight for your baby, And that's where a lot of agony, I think, and anxiety comes in. So I've actually learned to detach myself from a project. As much as I love it, it's not my baby, I've cultivated a certain distance to it, and that actually helps me to stay calmer in presentations, because I remind myself, well, this creative idea, okay, I've made it, but in the end, it may not come from me. It's out there now. It's separated. It kind of helps.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I have to feel that same way with every single podcast that I create, or every product that I launch, or every time I propose a coaching program to a client. Anytime I'm opening myself up to be judged, or for people to say, no, I don't like that, or no, I don't want that. And I've had to learn to create that sense of detachment from it, because otherwise, if you do, your emotions just ride up and down with the responses of other people. And that's not a very
you get very enmeshed. Yes, no. True.
So let's go back to the topic of comparing yourself to others. Mm-hmm. Why do you think this afflicts so many people?
Why does this inflict so many people? Well, when you compare yourself to someone else too much, you shift away from yourself. So whenever you get caught up in someone else's process, you're not really standing in your truth, because if you really know who you are, then you are strong, you're confident, you're standing in your truth. You would never compare yourself to someone else. So just a slight difference, it's okay to have role models or people to look up to. That's a different place to be, because that's a place of appreciation. So you can look at other people, look at what they are good at, and say, wow, Peter or Susan is so good at this and that. And I would love to nurture my skills like that as well, because, what you're doing in that moment is you're recognizing your own qualities in someone else. So their qualities are reflected back to you. And so you realize, oh, I want to be better at this. But this doesn't have to do anything with comparison. So whenever you get caught up too much in someone else's process, that is just a symptom, So that's just to visualize it. It's like the pinnacle of the iceberg. But underneath, if we look below the water, there's something much more profound and much more deep. And that is simply a disconnection from yourself. Yeah. Because when you're connected to yourself, you know who you are, and you wouldn't get caught in someone else's process. And yes, so I'm very sure that this is what is at heart, and this is what's going on with all of us, unfortunately. I mean, I wouldn't want to throw everyone in the same pot, but these days we're saying, oh, we're living in an era of connectedness, but actually, many people are more isolated and disconnected than they've ever been anywhere in history. So that's quite a paradox.
Absolutely. I had one of my podcast listeners, Joel, he wrote to me and said, because I sent an email out to my subscribers recently on a similar topic to this, and he wrote back and said that his pastor often says, don't compare your day-to-day life, as in your daily grind, with someone else's highlights reel, which is essentially someone else's, like what people put on social media is their highlights reel. It's the best bits of their lives. It's the exciting, fun bits of their lives. And that's all you see. And then when that's all you see, and you then go, well, my life it seems boring and dull and sad in comparison. And then I think that's one of the main contributing factors to what you're talking about, Ines, in terms of people feeling so disconnected.
Yes. And, the problem is that, we judge people for being so positive or for doing this or that on social media. I mean, all we see is the stuff on social media, and we judge people for that or this, or that they're so positive all the time. But in the end, we have no idea about any other person. We have no idea what other people go through. Most often the people that are the happiest and the most fulfilled and the most optimistic are the ones that have gone through the most. That is such a common truth that I've come across so many times. So taking a step back from judging and looking at ourselves.
Can you share an example, Ines, of how you have gone on your own journey of comparing yourself less to others and working through that?
So I studied architecture in Vienna, but then got admitted to do my master's at Delft University of Technology in Holland. So I moved to Holland, and that was an eye-opening experience for me because, Delft Architecture School is, if rankings really have a saying, it says that Delft is one of the best universities for architecture in the world. So I was completely honored to be there, and I got there. The faculty was amazing, and the people I came across, they were all international, super creative, brilliant people. And first, that empowered me and inspired me a lot. But then kind of after time, a lot of doubt started to creep in because, I started to compare myself, way too much,
What sort of things were you comparing yourself to?
Oh, I'm not creative enough. My detailing skills are not good enough, or even my English skills are not good enough. I mean, people came along with big posters of heavily illustrated stuff that I had no idea how to even start doing that on a computer. So what really led me down a spiral of shame and disbelief is that I felt less than, always less than anyone else. And and that's when I started to realize, okay, I need to work on this, because it's not normal.
Did you talk to your friends, your architecture colleagues about this?
No, I was very closed about all of this. So back then, talking about my feelings, talking about what's on my mind didn't come natural to me. It's only now that I actually finished my studies that I'm speaking my truth. So before, I should have done anything about it, but no, I didn't.
Do you think your other peers were going through similar things?
Yes, I think so, yeah. In the end, we're all going through very similar things. And I think we could encourage much more empathy at school if we had, someone to go to for these issues. I know that study associations always have, some kind of go-to person for these things. But honestly, who wants to go to a person and say, oh, I have this problem because I compare myself too much to others, or it's too much stress. Like, not a lot of people do that. But I feel if we did that, we could encourage a very different and more truthful and kind culture.
I think in architecture school, there was this culture of who can work the longest hours, who can pull the most all-nighters, who can, have the most amount of work done. And it was almost like a badge of honor where people would say, oh yeah, I haven't slept in 3 days and I've had like 10 Red Bulls today, and it was like people were like almost competing as to how many hours of sleep you could go without. And there was this really this really destructive culture of the more you work, the better you'll do, and it was very competitive in that way. And I think as students, we were trying so hard to show that we were invincible, and that we weren't don't show any weakness, because that means that you'll do worse than them.
You're
and then
vulnerable.
they'll do exactly.
Yes. Well, that whole competition thing, I tried to combat it, and I tried to, focus more on myself. But even though I shifted my focus back on myself, I tried the most that I could. I also stayed up all night because that's what I did during my studies, I stayed up all night. I didn't do a lot of sports, and I put all my heart and my soul into this one project. So all these self-sacrifices, all these things that disconnected me from myself. And the result of that was that, well, firstly, I got the lowest grade for that project. So that was a huge blow for me. I got the lowest grade. And when I didn't get proper feedback, I felt very vulnerable and attacked. And that resulted in a massive breakdown, that really made me rethink all my beliefs, all my values. Because I finally realized, and that's why it was a blessing in disguise, this massive breakdown, that, my definition of success and my definition of accomplishment doesn't work like this. I need to change something.
So this was how long into your degree?
1 semester.
This is 1 semester in. Okay, so what did you start to do then after that?
Well, I got into mindfulness.
Okay.
I thought I was a failure, first of all. And so first of all, I needed to deal with, okay, what do I do about the fact that I feel like a failure, So I read a lot of things, and because generally I'm a person, I think a lot about stuff. And, I've gone through so many things in my life where I could have perceived that I failed. And that's why at that point I knew, okay, I might feel like a failure, but actually after a while of contemplation, I know that this is not a failure. This is actually just failing forward. It's learning, it's part of the journey to, so what, lowest grade, that's just the system. System conditions us that a low grade means, you're a bad person or your project is bad. That is not true, So if you do have the courage to look outside of what the system perceives, then you might see that, you're quite blessed, because only society tells us what good and what bad is.
Hi Rockstar, I want to take a quick break to let you know that applications for my February group coaching program are now open. This program is for high-performing professionals and leaders of any gender who want to dramatically increase their influence, impact, and confidence in the workplace. Over 10 weeks, you will learn how to manage your fears and anxiety, be more assertive, be an influential leader, build your confidence with public speaking, and articulate yourself and your ideas clearly. Now, these are the skills that will absolutely get you to that next level at work. You'll be learning in a collaborative environment and be 100% supported by myself and the group. Now, the training's conducted online, so it can be done from anywhere. If you're keen, book in a discovery call with me and we'll explore if the program is a good fit for you and your goals. Go to thecmethod.com/group coaching to book in a call. That link is also in the description of your podcast in your app. Okay, let's get back to the show. So how did you start to redefine your version of success?
Well, first of all, I read a book by Arianna Huffington, It's called Thrive. So that was a major companion for me because Ariana describes in a book that, within a lot of stress, she bumped her head towards a chair or something. So she had a big wound, and that's what made her, redefine what success means to her. So she came up with this new dimension of success, this new metric, which is based on, things like compassion, giving, and wisdom, balance. And I thought, wow, wisdom, a success story made out of wisdom. That's quite powerful, I think. And so I went deeper into that wisdom field, and I came across mindfulness. And I came across the book, The Power of Now, from Eckhart Tolle. And, as the title suggests, the power of now, there's huge power in the now. Often we go looking for answers in the future and in the past, and don't realize that, the present is actually the gift. And what Eckhart says is that mindfulness isn't anything else than presence, So it's about bringing presence to what you do right now in that moment. So you can do that while you sit down, you can do that while you stand. So that's what I started to do, bring awareness when I get up in the morning, not immediately bring my brain into what I need to do, but focus on the task at hand. So I'm getting up, I can feel the ground, going into the kitchen, very consciously preparing my meals. And when I sit down, when I eat my meal, I really focus on what I eat, because I've noticed that, prior to that experience, I just used dining or food just, to fuel me up. But food is such a gift from the universe or whatever, food culture. So I really trained myself to sit down and nourish my body and enjoy every piece of food that I put into my body.
So when you say you focus on what you eat, do you mean you literally like stare at your food and eat it, very slowly? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I eat it slowly, I chew it, and I engage all my senses, So I really try and smell the food. I really try and taste the food, and I really try and see all the colors that are in it. Just it's about bringing more awareness to those everyday things.
I think that's a really important point, especially for those of you or us. We've all been guilty of this, who've like wolfed down our lunch while checking email, or you have a bite of your sandwich, put it down, look at your phone, or you eat while you're on the phone. And by the end of the meal, you're like, you don't even remember eating it. You're like, where did my food go? That's mindless eating.
Yes, for sure.
And how did all of this start to then affect your work because you continued with your degree, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So how did this mindful practice and this new awareness then impact how you approached your work and your results?
Well, I can tell you that regular meditation, changed my life. So I started to apply meditation 10 minutes a day, not a huge effort, either in the morning or before I go to sleep, preferably at the same time though. Just sit still and lend my ears to what is beyond all the noise, and lend my ears to the nothingness that is all around us, because that's when you enter the gateway into the presence of the soul, and it's very, very beautiful. So after, a few weeks of meditation, I could actually feel a lot of difference. So I could feel I was calmer, because I used to be very impulsive. I was more calm. I was less reactive to my external surroundings, more grounded within myself, and surprisingly more resilient and diplomatic at school reviews. Okay. So it actually did a lot for me. And it's not a coincidence, because a study at Harvard University revealed that, MRI scans revealed that just after 8 weeks, there are massive changes within the brain if you meditate regularly, even if it's just 10 minutes. So what happens is that you have the amygdala in the brain, and that is kind of your fear center, the fight and flight center. That's where all your emotions go off. That's when you're very reactive to your environment. But only after 8 weeks, those scans reveal that the amygdala even physically shrinked. And at the same time, the prefrontal cortex in the brain increased. in size. So while your fear went down, your reactive nature went down, your decision making went up, your strength went up, your resilience went up. And
Wow.
I mean, meditation is proven to change lives.
Yeah.
It's science.
So Ines, can you give an example of, let's say, like during your presentations at school, when you were while you were meditating, can you share how you would have reacted to a review before you had started the meditation practice compared to how you were after?
So I always enjoyed presenting a lot. And I was quite convinced of the ideas that I had. But whenever someone said something against it, because, it was my baby. So whenever someone said something against it, or this doesn't work, that doesn't work, I became very reactive and said, oh, why do you think doesn't this work? Huh? Why do you think doesn't this work? Tell me why this doesn't work. And I just felt, like a small baby that wanted to cry and go into the corner afterwards. So I felt very, very small afterwards. That was the biggest consequence, I think. I felt very small, not really mature in that sense. And after meditation, I trained myself that, okay, first of all, criticism, feedback is positive. And whenever someone says something to you, even if that is not in an appropriate manner, you don't go and get a reaction. You try and soften, So first you say, oh, well, thank you for that. Thank you for letting me know. What makes you think that, So that kind of eases the conversation. And then you really get down to the truth, what the real issue of that comment was. Because often the comments that you get are not the real truth of what is actually going on.
And why is that?
Well, I remember back in Vienna, so I did a democracy forum in Vienna, and it was not one whole building, but it was 2 separate buildings within one site with a big patio and a plaza in the middle. And this tutor comes along and says, oh, you should put those 2 pieces together, those 2 buildings. And I'm like, well, thank you for your comment, but why do you think should they be together? He said, well, because it's one building, it should be together, And so back then I was very reactive to that. But if I got that same comment now, I would really try and get down to the truth. What is your problem with the fact that a democracy forum has 2 different pieces of a building? It doesn't have to be one building. So that's kind of a comment that comes from somewhere else. It's came up out of thin air, if you ask me. Yeah.
Because often people's comments, they're coming from a deeper place where they might have their own perception or their own previous experience, or even their own insecurities, which might explain why they're making that comment. I'm reading a book at the moment. It's called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, it's awesome. I highly recommend it. The Big Leap. So in the book, he tells the story of how he was coaching these top level executives who were fighting, and there was this conflict about like, oh, we don't want to open up another warehouse in this country and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that one of them was just saying, I don't want to do it. And they just thought he was against it. But it turned out that his underlying feelings was that he was fearful that the business might fail if they expanded too quickly. So that was his concern, but he couldn't express his emotions effectively, or didn't feel.
Yeah.
He was afraid of being vulnerable in front of his other colleagues, so he just expressed it as anger and just saying, "Nah, I don't want to do it."
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to remember that everyone's got their own stuff going on inside of them and their own fears and vulnerabilities, and not everyone is adept at expressing themselves in an effective way.
And if you ask me, it's difficult to express yourself. I mean, to me, it didn't come naturally. I really needed to learn how to do that, to accept my emotions, to express them in an appropriate manner. I mean, as kids, we can do that, but then on the way, we get a lot of self-limiting beliefs from society and other people. So it's kind of part of maturity to express your emotions and to communicate them. But maturity, I believe, has to be earned.
What do you mean by that?
well, to be a really mature person and to, to speak your truth, I think it takes a lot of unraveling of who you really are, because as you grow older, if you get self-limiting beliefs or fear, because that inevitably happens, so, with some people more, with some people less, but then your truth gets clouded with all those beliefs that are actually not from you, but from others. And so to really reach maturity and a high self-awareness, it needs to be earned, because you need to, it's your responsibility, it's your job to unravel that, to get rid of everything that's holding you back. So I think authentic empowerment has to be earned. Yeah.
And it does take work. It takes a lot of work, people who like you can be practicing. I mean, it's like developing strong communication skills. Like it's not just something you learn and you're done with it. Like it's an ongoing journey. You look at monks who have achieved enlightenment and they still see themselves as being on the journey. There's no destination. So Ines, this has been really interesting talking with you, and I really appreciate you sharing, your experiences with everyone. Can you tell us a bit about what is your truth and how are you helping people in the world to find theirs?
Yes, thank you for that. My mission basically is to empower architects and creatives to find their voice and share their truth. And well, why do I do that? Because first of all, I want to see our industry to be an empowered and inspiring place to be in, where we empower each other, where we are safe and feel valued. And also I'd love to see our environments be inclusive, being conscious, because as you might know, as a former architecture student, Christina, our built environment has major cognitive impacts on our well-being. They can heal us, or they can make us really depressed and agitated, even, induce higher crime rates. And so if there's a job definition of what I really do, I would say I am an activist, probably an activist for truth, helping other people find and share their truth. I'm a teacher, probably the most, and I work as a TV host, I'm a speaker, and currently I'm also publishing a book. And what my aim really is with What Architecture School Doesn't Teach You, I want to build it into a global educational platform that starts a movement among architects in the world to become more conscious and empowered about who they are, and in turn create conscious environments. Because whatever we see in the external world always comes from within.
Love it. Well, I love your passion, Ines, and I cannot wait to see the impact that you make in helping more people to find their truths, because I think that is really important.
Yes, well, thank you to you, Christina. It's been a pleasure to be in the show.
A big thanks to Ines Hemmings from What Architecture School Does Not Teach You for being an amazing guest on the show this week and for sharing her story. Check the description of this podcast for links on how to connect with Ines. Now, before I leave you, remember to apply for the group coaching program if developing your leadership, your confidence, and your influence in the workplace is something that you want to achieve in the next year. Go to thecmethod.com/group coaching to apply, where we'll set up a call and explore if the program is a good fit for you. All right, thanks for listening, Rockstar. I'll talk to you next week. My name's Christina Canters, and this has been Stand Out, Get Noticed.